So in this one, we're just going to break down the new features that I have integrated. So right now, they've been integrated into the app, and I didn't need to do much application work because I had to just structure it the same way it was originally structured. So I didn't need to do much front end of mobile tasks, but I just had to just focus more on ensuring that the APIs produce the same information and didn't deviate too much from what I already had structured. So just to get right into it, I would go on my screen so that I'll break down the tasks for you, like the things I have done. But primarily, it's not just this is not a tutorial of any sort. It's just more or less of a way of just showcasing what has been built so far, what has been done, the new features, how I structure the data, and so on and so forth. So before we jump on the screen, I just want to take note that I didn't really do much changes to the flow. So in the sense that what I mean is the current structure that the APIs work with, I didn't need to change that flow much, but I had to write up some separate stuff, which I will showcase on the screen right now. Okay, so as you can see on my screen, I have this file called provider plans. So if you can see, this is a .py. If you have any experience with programming or Python programming, you understand some bits of what is going on here. But nonetheless, this is Python. This is written in Python and in a framework called Django. But don't be confused with frameworks or languages. Just know that a framework primarily just a collection of reusable code inside of the language. So nonetheless, I'll just go ahead to just break down the structure of what I have going down here. So there are a few files we just walk through. I will showcase these provider plans, and I'll also look into this models.py, which I want to showcase already how we had the data going before or the structure going before and how we have it currently going right now. So um, for some of these features, like for instance, you can see airtime data. We'll just focus on this data model. There is this stuff called shared info, which has like some information that is shared between datas, but we had this structure going on, this data structure here going on, and it was efficient up to the point that it wasn't. So what do I mean by this? So right now we needed to add in another provider. I didn't want to totally discard the other provider we had. So yes, I believe there are ways around this, but just for the case we have, I just had to ensure that we became more efficient with how we are writing the code. So if you can look here in the data, what we call a model instead of Django framework. Okay, if you're familiar with Python or with backend, just know that this is a backend framework. Maybe if you're interested in me breaking down some of these terms for you, like frameworks, backend, front end, all these terms I'm using here. If you want me to break them down, you can comment down below so that I can, possibly create a video or we can do a Q&A of some sorts. So that aside or that out of the way, I just wanted to ensure that this structure here was more flexible because we had different kinds of plans, different providers. So this is not so flexible enough for me because if we wanted to make it more robust, it will need to add more data, maybe add more complications, do some conjoining with databases, which can be a nightmare in a sense. So I just opted for something simpler. So if we go on the provider plans, we can see that I have some bits of code here. We'll run through all of them bit by bit and just show how I've used them. Okay. So if we look through the code, I am just not doing nothing too crazy here. I'm importing some model, okay, which is like a provider switch. So it's just very simple. I want the different kinds of plans. I want different, okay, let me just run through that model real quick before we proceed. So this is the provider switch. These are the providers that I have. These are the different types of data plans that we have going on our platform. So I want a situation that I can choose the provider at will, the kind of plan for any network, right? So if it is MTN, Glow, whatever, I could just go ahead and see what these different categories are. So nonetheless, that's what the provider switch does, and I just imported that into this file. Okay, but before I used it, I had to ensure it was migrated. But that is something else for another day, if you understand Python and Django. So nonetheless, I have a few things going on here. So I have a function here. I have different plans, which is from my different providers. I have another provider, and I have some reusable functions that I have, in the class, inside of methods, and so on and so forth. So we'll break them all down bit by bit here in this video. So just know that these two plans, they resemble a lot each other. It's just that the prices are different. So nothing crazy with that. I will break down too much. So I have a function. I have a few things, some parameters that it takes in. So for instance, the price, the code for each plan has a code, right? Then the data size, which is like the bandwidth, more or less, if we call it that. Then the cost price, how much I buy it. Then some ID, which is like an ID we use in our own, instead of our mobile app, to identify different plans, right? Then the network, we set a default. Then the reseller amount, because we have resellers on our platform. At least I want to give different prices for resellers than normal buyers, because I believe resellers, they have more customers. Okay, so as they have more customers, I think the goal is more or less, if I can give them cheaper data rates, I'll make less profit per data plan, but I believe with transaction volume, I would make more money. But nonetheless, so that's just the whole concept about reseller amounts. Then I have the data plans. So I'll just run you through the different sections I have going on. So I will just close up these for now to just keep our code base simple. Minimize that a bit too. So I have a dictionary. Okay. So I just want to talk about my rationale behind this kind of structure for what we have going on. I realized that instead of me, because if you can see now, there are different layers to this. So imagine if this were a model. Yeah, we could create something like this in a model like for the database structure. But anyways, I had to make trade-offs, because I could opt for simplicity. I could edit these things much more on the fly, because they are in like fields. I can go to an admin page, change up the prices quickly like that. But in this particular case, I had to just, if I want to make a change in the price, I have to update it in my computer here, send it to the server, and ensure that everything is fine and dandy. But that can take some time, but it's trade-offs nonetheless. So I was thinking about a more simpler structure, because with this structure now, I can just add stuff. So like right now, one major plan is missing for like a network, but with that now, it's just a matter of making these fields similar. It will just also populate on my mobile app as well. So that's the kind of rationale I was thinking. Because if I wanted to go about this structure now, I have to think about different things and so on and so forth. So enough rambling about that, but let me just break down some of the things in detail, just very high level, because they are very repetitive. It's just a matter of pricing and stuff. So for instance, we look at this KV data plans MTN SME, right? We can see that we have a list, right, of different data plans. This is the way it shows up on my mobile app. So we have a list of different plans, which includes like the code, the price. So I will see the first parameter in here is the price. Then this is the code for the provider. Then this is how much data it is. This is how much it cost me. This is the ID. Then this is the reseller amount. Yeah, you guys should buy from me though. Don't buy from these guys. Buy from me. Support your boy. You know what I'm saying? So nonetheless, so we have a bunch of these plans here. So I'm not going to go through every one of them, because they're all the same thing. Just each plan has its own price, simple basic stuff. So that's what I do. I go ahead for this. This is just the structure. Okay. Then the main fun stuff comes in when we talk about there's a class quote unquote, like I call them like a factory nonetheless, that houses all the different arms, branches of your code. So in programming speak, more or less, we are using what's the name, object-oriented programming, to optimize and ensure that we are, you know, keeping things simple, keeping the code simple, and ensure everything works smoothly and works fine. So, nonetheless, that's just it. So that's just one plan. MTN, like I said, they all represent each this thing. So there's Airtel, same same shares, it just maybe a different name, just to identify the different plans easily. So we have that for KB data, we have that for the other plan, which is Rufus, same thing, nothing too crazy. So we just kept this to ensure that at least we have a set structure, pricing, we can easily add up stuff, take out stuff, quickly and efficiently. So there are a bunch of things that we have going on here inside of the files that I will just quickly breeze over so that this doesn't become a tutorial. I'm just breaking down my code for you, just the rationale and how we are thinking about these things. So we have an exception here, which is just to catch when we didn't find a plan based on an ID, right? So we have then the data plan processor, which is the name of the class, then some initializations we have going on, which is represents different parts of our code. So for instance, we are calling up this function here in this first line so that we can know who the provider is or assign it a variable. So with this now, we can say, okay, we have this cell provider, which we are talking to our model. Okay, we have a provider switch so that I can easily switch between the providers, which I actually do use. So we have, in the event that this is not available, we should have like a default. What's the name? A default provider like this KB data. Just put in basic information there in the event that there's none there. So, but if there is, we should run this, which will get the first item that it gets from the query search, then it returns some information from that model. Okay, so we have that selected provider, then we have a plan provider selector. This ensures that the plan provider, we are able to select the one we want and choose the particular plan. So if the provider is the KV data, right, because we've ensured that the data on our model matches the data that we have processing here. So we ensure that if this is that, then we assign the plan to the relevant name and so on. So if there's none, we return that, but we return the plan nonetheless if it is selected. So moving on, we have a list of plans, which gives us all the plans in a list. So what it's doing is when it gets the provider info, checks everything, and we have the plan. Okay, so we go through the plans. If you notice inside of our structure here, we had going for KB data, for instance. So we can say we have plans, then the network, then the one that is selected by the provider, because we want to have those data structures down to a T. So I'm not just really going to bore you guys so much with all this code. Unless you guys want more of these breakdowns, I will gladly do that. But we just keep it simple. We have the plans, we have the network and the network category. Based on that, we are selecting the data in that order so that we know what's up. If that we throw an exception that we did not find any network did not exist, the network category doesn't exist. So in case there's a mismatch between the data we have going on and the one that we are representing inside of our code. So nonetheless, guys, so that's just the stuff. We have some other stuff that helps with filtering just by ID and by the network and the plan, because sometimes whenever the customer will want to give them a particular data plan, we have to filter by the network and the ID so that we can get it. So, but we can also just filter by the ID directly. So this is like a loop nonetheless. So that's just more or less like the breakdown of the code. I know this was like a long way to break down what we had going on, but actually it took a bit of work to think about the processes, convey it into code. Yes, I did have a bunch of help from ChatGPT, but it's a good tool to use, stuff. I really desire to maybe do more of those sections where I am using ChatGPT, but I like to do those in live sections. But you should get to 50 subscribers, guys, so that at least I can do that more swiftly from my phone. Pull up my phone, we do live sessions, chat, interact, talk, do some coding work, so on and so forth. But nonetheless, before we wrap this up, let's just show you where we've used this, because I've just given you a bunch of stuff, but I've not told you where I've used it. So I'll just go to where I have it going down, which is like in this little function here. I use it in two parts. One is to get a list of all the data plans, so that at least it can filter with any data provider. We quickly switch and get the data plan for all the networks, of that particular provider. So just keeping it simple like that. That's just how we've done it. But that's just more or less what that list of plans are. So if you go on our app, you see the list of plans for each provider or each network, right? So that means you can easily get access to our plan. So this is just more or less I just gave you one instance. So this is the next instance where we are actually purchasing data. So I actually buying a data plan. So before we had a different bit of code, right? I want to just show you how much changed. This is all the section that changed. This is the major update that we did here. This entire section here. Every other thing just maybe added some small things here to optimize the code, but much code changes didn't exist. So that is to show that if you have your code structure, making updates and making upgrades shouldn't be so much difficult when your code structure is like properly optimized and well laid out, right? So that's just more or less what is done. So it's just very simple stuff. We import our provider with some import methods over here. So like this data plan processor here. So we add that to the class, right? So in Python, you can just add that and have access to all of the methods, layered in. So I get the provider info, I run up, I get some tokens because each provider has its tokens. Obviously, this is inside of our files hidden somewhere, so it's not visible. You always try to keep sensitive information invisible and hidden away. So we have that token. If it is this provider, we get that token. If it is the others, we use the other one. So we do that for the token, we do that for the URL. We also try to use comments here where we can, so that at least it's clear on what we're trying to do and achieve. So the provider base URL, we also have the URLs laid out somewhere. So we have that. Then we're just going ahead to try in the events that we get, because this is just more or less testing out on the APIs, right? If we are able to get a specific data plan, which would give us the information, else it would more or less fail. So that's just what this whole section here is trying to do. But nonetheless, it's just simple stuff, guys. Then we go ahead to get the network, we get the network ID, how much data we are buying, how much based on that ID, right? Then the amount. Then it just goes ahead to run up the processes. Not anything too different from what we had going on before. Like I said, just a bunch of code on how to buy it. But in the end, you are able to purchase data. So guys, that is more or less what we have for this video. Yeah, so we've gone through, let me stop this. So we've gone through all the things that are required to get more or less what the whole update has been. This recording is almost 20 minutes long, but we'll try to shorten it to something more digestible. But nonetheless, these long form videos are still, I believe, breaking down these tech things, how you can go about making these upgrades. Because these upgrades didn't take so long, right? But it's not completely done. I also have like an admin stuff that I did to help me see the profits more, do some of that stuff. I'll demo that app next just to keep the video content rolling for you guys if you like this kind of content. So that being said, everyone, thanks so much for watching, because I believe that covers up everything that has been done, and has gone into the application. So thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next video next week. So do like, do subscribe, and goodbye.